Family, friends, and the reason we're here, the class of 2011. Getting through engineering school is no small achievement, and my hat is off to you. I'll try to be brief because I know you have plenty of other stuff to do today. I graduated from SIU-C with an engineering degree but did not attend my own commencement as I couldn't afford the cap and gown fee. So I have no idea what sort of wisdom was conveyed at my graduation ceremony. For this speech, I was in uncharted territory. I wanted to tell jokes. I always like speakers who tell jokes, although I can seldom remember the jokes later. I discussed this with my family and friends who voted it down. Don't try jokes, they said, not your strong suit. Tell your story, they said. Tell what you have learned. So I will follow their advice and tell you 3 things I've learned. I'll just stick with 3. I'm grateful but astonished that I have been invited here to deliver this speech. I never even thought I would make it through engineering school in the first place. I came here with a journalism background. I worked at the DE in the Southern Illinoisan. I had a bachelor's degree in journalism from SIU-C before I came to the engineering school. By the way, I couldn't afford to go to that graduation either. I did not take physics or calculus in high school. I was told by my high school counselor that my job choices were 1, nurse, 2, secretary, 3, teacher, or 4, flight attendant, in those days called an airline stewardess. I told my counselor those are all honorable professions, but I don't think I'd be good at any of those things. So I didn't take physics or calculus in high school. Oh no, I got the opportunity to take those remedial classes in those subjects just to get into this college. I remember my first class in engineering economics with Howard Hesketh in A111. I sat in the front row so I wouldn't miss anything. Before class started, a gentleman sitting next to me, I'll call him student number 1, was bragging loudly that he had flunked out of the University of Illinois, which he said everybody knew was a much better school than SIU. His message was that even a student who had flunked out of U of I was light years better than an SIU-C student. He said SIU was going to be such a piece of cake compared to U of I. I sat there very quiet, so intimidated. I knew engineering school was going to be very hard work for me, and here was someone who had flunked out of a far, far better school, or so it sounded. He was going to sail right through the classes that I was going to have to struggle so hard to master. 6 weeks later, that gentleman was gone from SIU-C. I'll let you guess what happened to him. Another student, let's call him student number 2, asked if he could sit in the seat next to me since student number 1 was gone. Student number 2 was a quiet, earnest, hard-working fellow who agreed with me that engineering school was going to take a lot of work. Student number 2 kept his focus, got help where he could get it, put in the effort, and went on to get his BSEE with a straight A average. He also got an A from Professor Nickel. You can ask your teachers who Professor Nickel was. Student number 2 is now the president of Rolls-Royce Defense, a manufacturer of jet engines. Student number 2 is also my husband. This brings me to the first thing I've learned. This is a double lesson. First, the old proverb is true that empty vessels make the most noise. You can ponder this thought further when you have a slow moment at one of your graduation parties. Second, I learned what it was like to deal with a snob. Snobs will intimidate you when you are younger. They'll become easier to recognize as you get older. They'll loudly pronounce that only people who possess a certain pedigree are smart enough to do the task, or that anyone who doesn't come from the East or West Coast is a country jamoke, or only people from an Ivy League school or Stanford or MIT are qualified for the best jobs, or your kid doesn't belong in the soccer team because he's still trying to learn the game, or you don't know what you're talking about because you don't have enough experience. Well, actually, there's some merit to that one, but I'll throw it in there because people without experience have accomplished extraordinary things, so why should that stop you? Every time you encounter one of these people, take the encounter as a cue to sharpen your focus so that you can accomplish what you set out to do and prove them wrong. Student number 1 was so wrong. Student number 2 taught me a powerful lesson about that. Every one of you has within you the ability to teach the same powerful lesson. By the way, if you forget any of these things I've learned, you can ask your parents. They have learned the same lessons and probably have even better stories than I do to illustrate. So I graduated from SIU-C. Everyone told me, do what you love. In true engineering style, to prepare for this speech, I've researched dozens of commencement speeches. Many of the speakers have urged, do what you love. The main problem with that is that not all people your age know what they love yet. You have to try things to find out what you love. That must include trying things that don't work out. I have noticed that people in college and recent graduates view every decision as so laden with meaning that they'll never recover if the decision happens to be wrong. If I take this job and it's the wrong decision, I'll be doing it the rest of my life and I'll be miserable the rest of my life. So they sit there paralyzed. This brings me to the second thing I've learned, which is I couldn't believe how many opportunities opened up if I just learned to be a little flexible and optimistic. What do I mean by that? I mean that especially in this economy, if a job opportunity comes along that is not exactly what you're looking for, think twice before you refuse it. Watch how many opportunities open up if you are just flexible and optimistic. I've worked for bad bosses in the past. The wonderful thing about working for a bad boss is that you learn extraordinary lessons about how you are not going to behave when you become the boss. So valuable. The lessons learned from imperfect decisions are so much more valuable than the lessons learned from a perfect decision. Learning how to rebound from a bad decision is a priceless, and sometimes painful experience. To rebound successfully, you have to be flexible. Watch how many opportunities open up if you are just flexible and optimistic. I wanted to be an engineer who writes. When I graduated, I couldn't find job descriptions for engineers who like to write. I took a position as an engineer designing test equipment, but soon I began to spot opportunities to write. Presentations to my managers, telling them how we could turn around a task more quickly. I wrote a little newsletter for the other engineers describing what was going on in our group. My first positions did not involve much writing, but over time I collected lessons learned and migrated to a position in which probably about 85% of my time is spent communicating with others, to inform, to persuade, to negotiate. In addition to a law degree, a patent attorney, which is what I am, must have a bachelor's degree in engineering or science discipline. So my technical background is a prerequisite for what I do. But I also had to invent opportunities and go after them to morph my career into the career that makes me happy, so that I can do what I love. About 15% of my time is spent doing tasks I don't love. Should I quit? I don't know. I think that's a pretty good percentage. I was talking to student number 2 the other day. Remember student number 2? He pointed out that sometimes he comes into work early and discovers that the printer is out of paper. Now, when this happens, he could say, I didn't become the president of a company in order to spend time putting paper in a printer, but he doesn't. He refills the printer and he focuses energy on the percentage of time that he's doing the tasks that really engage him. He thinks it's a pretty good percentage too. Be flexible and optimistic, and watch how many opportunities open up. By the way, he also watches who else puts the paper in the printer and how they do it. According to him, the person who puts just enough paper in the printer to get their copies done is doing the job. The person who fills the printer to the top so that everyone has plenty of paper, that person is a potential future leader. He watches that. So watch how many opportunities open up if you're just flexible. Okay, time to wrap this up, so let me get to the third thing. I think you'll agree that based on my experience, an engineering career does not have to fit the stereotypes that have been created about engineering careers. But I am finding that kids today are buying into those very stereotypes. The stereotypes that say you have to be a genius in math and science to even consider an engineering career. The stereotypes that say that engineers sit in a little cubicle all day and type on a computer. The stereotypes that gave rise to the joke, okay, I'll tell one joke. How do you recognize an engineer who is outgoing? He stares at your shoes when he talks. I know people who work in the theater business who sit all day typing on a computer, but you don't hear anyone saying, I'm not going into theater because I don't want to sit all day typing on a computer. Let's get to the 21st century on this. Here's a quote from a speech by President Obama that he made in February. He said, "Today, the most common educational background for America's top business leaders isn't economics, it's not finance, it's not even business, it's engineering. Engineering." A report published last year by the National Science Foundation acknowledges that these stereotypes are persistent. Kids are buying into misconceptions regarding intelligence when it comes to an engineering career. They believe unless you're a math genius going into the 7th grade, you should steer clear of it. But the report says that research indicates ability and intelligence are not necessarily fixed, but can be developed over time with hard work and proper support. Nevertheless, the report says, many students and teachers believe intelligence is a fixed trait, and this belief can hinder a student's motivation and ability to learn and improve. It goes on to say, critically, the belief in fixed intelligence can create a fear of failure within a student, yet innovation requires risk-taking and outside-the-box thinking. Even studies of geniuses and landmark creative accomplishments demonstrate that talent alone is insufficient, and sustained diligent training and practice are indispensable. So you can see the perceptions that kids are getting are not based on reality. Help me change that. Please take the opportunity to get out, especially to the middle schools in your community, which is when the interest in math and science starts to wane in many of these kids, and talk to them about how fun engineering can be. If you, like me, were not a genius mathematician in middle school, let them know that too. Help me break these stereotypes apart. In addition, okay, I'm wrapping up here. I think we engineers are so critical to the seamless conduct of everyday life, yet go about our business so quietly and professionally that people are starting to take us for granted. So I came up with a little something to help get the message out about how vital engineering is to our lives. So I started with these t-shirts that we had made when we were in engineering school 26 years ago. And then I went from there. So a little cheer for SIU. E to the x dy dx, e to the x dx, secant tangent cosine sine 3.14159, cube root square root BTU, Ohm's law, Bragg's law, SIU. I'm not done yet. That's just the start. That's dorky, okay? Engineers do more than trig and calculus. So I tried to come up with more, and this part's interactive. When I point at you guys, you got to say engineers, and you got to say it loud. So let's practice. Engineers. Good. Well, that's the start. You'll get louder as we go. eBay, Twitter, solar power, cloud computing by the hour, nonstick pots and nonstick pans, products from recycled cans, batteries that hold their charge, fancy yachts for living large, Better artificial tears, all the work of... Let's go on. Bluetooth, airplanes, memory foam, GPS to get you home, roads that ease a traffic jam, ouch, another mammogram, FaceTime, lasers, cyberspace, things that help the human race, earthquake measurement devices, better tech at cheaper prices, mining coal from U.S. soil. Robots used to bottle beers, all the work of... Locomotives, microphones, radar guns for speeding zones, roller coasters, killer apps, goop to fill in plumbing gaps, hair gel, wireless, Post-it notes, paint that works with fewer coats, tempered glass that just won't break, infrared to brown your steak, satellites and submarines, headphones, ATM machines, iPod, iPad, fiberglass, ointment for a baby's rear end, thermostats to keep you cool, that robot thing that cleans your pool, finding fish on deadliest catch, lighting fire without a match, Facebook, Kindle, Photoshop, breathalyzer for a cop, memory sticks and DVDs, artificial hips and knees, plastic that is made from corn, tools to scale the Matterhorn, a fighter jet that disappears, all the work of... Greener fuels, the internet, chips so you can find your pet, airbags, Velcro, telescopes, lifts to get you up the slopes, elevators, tractors, Salukis on high-def TV. A spaceship that can go to Mars, the lights on Dancing with the Stars, elevators, stereo, that video with the Rube Goldberg thing by OK Go. Airport scanners that you hate, fresher green beans on your plate, hearing aids to help your ears, all the work of... So when you hear that old refrain, engineers, don't they drive trains? Help me get this message out. That's not where we are all about. They say love makes the world go round, but love needs help this world has found. This fragile spinning blue-green sphere is really run by engineers. Thank you.